Art isn't just about paint or galleries in London, it's about connections and people connections. Me connecting with Dominic, with BT, me connecting with National Grid or Nissan, or connecting with Barclays Digital Eagles, or somebody who's running an arts project down the coast, or Mick Stevenson. It takes a whole village to raise a child, and STEAMco is about bringing the community together to power communities to inspire children with creativity. But I'd like to welcome to the stage somebody who's had an impact on my life when I was a student, and an impact on my midlife, and hopefully a bit of impact now. Big round of applause, please, for Martyn Ware from illustrious Heaven 17.
Thanks, Nick. Hello, everyone. I'm used to having a microphone in my hand. For those of you, you're all way too young. You're perhaps not quite. But I'm from a band called Heaven 17. We still tour, we still perform. Started the Human League originally. That's me in the Human League with a very fashionable beard in 1978, actually. Just shows everything comes around again. And I've always been interested in the multimedia approach to art. So it's not just about sound, it's about the way we look. And in this case, we were so boring to look at on stage that we actually had to have slides in the background to take people's mind off how boring we were, actually. I formed a production company called British Electric Foundation, which was a way of me getting in front of the general public about my passion for electronic soul music. And a lot of people blame me in part for the proliferation of dance music nowadays, as we were one of the first British bands to use exclusively electronic music. But I also wanted to work collaboratively, and this is the important point, with lots of different singers. So one of the people I rang up out of the blue, and I think a lot about creativity is about bravery as well, and just having a go and seeing what turns out. One of the people I rang up out of the blue was Tina Turner to perform on an album with me doing the backing tracks. And I thought, what have I got to lose? You know, she's going to say no. And she said yes. And from that simple thing enabled me to have a career in record production, for instance. And I formed a band called Heaven 17, as I say, still performing now. And I even invented an imaginary kind of company that looked like it had been around for decades, so I could convince people I was really important, when in fact we were just some poor kids from Sheffield doing what we did. And so we had all these slogans like the new partnership that's opening doors all over the world, and we nicked this idea from I think it was a Toshiba ad in Newsweek, and we got an artist to reinterpret it with us in the painting instead of like, you know, boring kind of suits shaking hands and stuff. And of course, we saw this as irony, but a lot of people thought this isn't irony, this is real. So we had lots of people, say for instance, from the City of London coming up to us and going, "Oh, great, mate, I love your album, yeah, let's all make a bomb, you know, fantastic." And I said, no, actually, Let's All Make a Bomb is about mutually assured destruction. We should all have a nuclear bomb, and then by the logic of mutually assured destruction, we'd all be a lot safer. And they went, "Oh, really? Okay." I preferred the first bit. And anyway, I thought in the year 2000, I could see that the music industry was going down the toilet due to the proliferation of boy bands, largely, and Simon Cowell, and who is part of is possibly the Antichrist in my eyes, I'm not really sure. But I formed a company called Illustrious to exploit this new technology that we co-developed. I've always been interested in the new versions of sound, and new versions of proliferating sound and beauty in sound, and the way that, you know, being in a fantastic concert makes you feel, or, you know, the bass pumping through your body, or, you know, the delicate sound of a choir in the Gods in the Royal Albert Hall, or the way that, you know, when you're by the seaside, the sound of the sea surrounds you, and every form of sound. And the only way that I could think of doing it was to actually have surround sound like you have in a cinema, but with height. So in other words, we invented a system, which we still use to this day, called 3D Audioscape, which enables us to move sound around freely, lots of sounds at the same time, and create amazing imaginary soundscapes. And it's very easy to use. It's designed for, I could teach anybody in this room, probably the kids a lot faster actually, in about an hour how to use it, and then they can be creating their own soundscapes. So that's my company, Illustrious. And in the last 15 years, I've created all sorts of exciting and interesting things, I think, anyway. I was recently asked by the National Trust to help create a big soundscape based on the sounds of the shore in Britain, lots of different locations. So I thought, well, this is a bit boring, me just going to like Brighton Pier and holding a microphone in front of somebody's face and asking them, you know, what they thought about the seaside. So I created a beach hut which had a recording device in it and a sign that just said, like in those beautiful kind of seaside lettering, you know, that just said, please tell us your memories or your thoughts about the coast while you look out this little window. And it's just a big red button, you pressed it, and we had lots of people going, oh, I don't think it's working, you know. And so I had to sift through 700 recordings of people going, including one of the places we took it to was Seaham, just down the coast here. And in fact, it was in the local paper. There was all people down there going, oh, it's a bit rough round here, you know. It's, you know, it'll get trashed. And I'm going, no, it'll be all right. It'll be absolutely fine, because I was there the first day, and then the whole rest of the week it was going to be on its own. I get a phone call 24 hours later saying that they'd had an impromptu rave around the beach hut, and it had got pushed over and the windows had got smashed. This is in the first day. It's all right though, because we were encouraging people to graffiti on the inside as well. So I won't go into details about some of the graffiti that was on there. Suffice to say, we had to delete some of it, but the majority of it, giving people the opportunity to contribute artistically is just an amazing thing, I think. So I'm very, very into crowdsourced art at the moment. And so people could draw their impressions of the sea, they could write the memories down, they could go, I heart David, you know, they could do anything they wanted, or record their voices doing it. And that's what interested me. Anyway, so we ended up in Somerset House with a very successful exhibition based on that. Moving on. This is quite an interesting thing. We were asked by Liverpool City Council to do a soundscape based on Cunard's 175th anniversary, and because Liverpool and Boston and New York have always had a big link. So I said, why don't we do that? Why don't we do a half-hour experience in three-dimensional sound the size of the Queen Elizabeth II, with lots of speakers everywhere in this shopping mall? I'm pointing at the screen, in this shopping mall, and we had about 50 speakers, and we created this historical journey in half an hour to New York and back over 175 years, and it was on for 8 weeks, and it increased the amount of footfall in the actual shopping area by 20% during that period. So it just shows it's not just fancy art, it can actually be commercially viable too. But the title of the talk was Bowie, How He Inspired Me, and I was, like everybody else, very shocked by his death. And I know to the generation that sat on the floor down here, I actually had somebody come up to me and said, who is David Bowie? Which was a bit of a shock, because he's so much a part of my life that I think we need to remember it, and I think this is a good thing and a good opportunity to discuss why it has such an impact on people. I had a chance to think about it. I was on BBC News talking about it, and I said he was almost like a reference point for creativity for me personally. I used to go, would Bowie think it's cool if when I created some music or created my own artwork, or I never tried to do mime like he did, but thank God. But he was trained with Lindsay Kemp, so a lot of his approach to music was very much a cross-disciplinary thing. So it involved the way he presented himself, fashion, art in general. He approved very strongly and sometimes created his own album covers, for instance. It wasn't just a generic thing, which is quite common nowadays. And, we take this sort of thing, this is such an iconic image. We take this sort of stuff for granted, but there are still people cutting their hair like David Bowie, dyeing their hair like David Bowie. There are still people. I did a Steve Strange memorial concert last week, and there were people older than me turning up with the Bowie flash on. It was quite interesting. I've got lots of photos online of it. These things have had such an influence on our teenage years because he was a living artwork talking about the confusion of sexuality when you're young. Now, of course, everybody goes, can you identify yourself as this sex or transgender or whatever? In those days, it was you were a man or a woman. It was quite straightforward, although it wasn't under the bonnet. And he gave us a way to discuss that publicly. He designed his own clothes, or rather, Zandra Rhodes helped him design his own clothes. He stretched himself, which is a really important thing to teach young people. I do a lot of lecturing. I'm always saying, get out of your comfort zone. Don't just do what you feel comfortable doing. It's good to feel uncomfortable doing things because that's the only way that you're ever going to find out whether you're any good at it. He's not a very good actor, David Bowie. I can tell you that now, and everybody knows that. But the fact that he had a go made you buy into it emotionally. So he did The Elephant Man on Broadway. He looks nothing like the Elephant Man, does he? He's quite a good-looking guy. The film was something else, and he did Man Who Fell to Earth as an alien, which is much closer to how he looks. And I thought he was pretty good in that. But he had a go, That's the thing. And this creativity carried on right till the final weeks, months of his life. This is a still from his last video, which he knew he was dying. He didn't know exactly when, but he anticipated and prepared an album in anticipation of the time of his death, called Black Star. And the video is terrifying, I think. I don't know if everybody's seen it, but it's #1 around the world anyway. But the point is, he right until the end, the thing that gave him pleasure was an artistic interpretation of his life, of his own existence. He was a living art exhibition. And everybody, I encourage, especially young people, to do things for artistic reasons and don't think about necessarily the commercial impetus behind it all, because in my experience, maybe I've been lucky, I don't know, but I don't think so. Then if you do things for the right reason, for the right artistic reason, then if it's any good, then the commercial aspect will follow it. And I think that's a very valuable lesson from Bowie as well, because he was doing that right until the end. This is my my first single. It came out in 1978, which I think was the year after Low and Heroes came out, the Bowie albums. It looks incredibly crude now, but I made that album cover myself, and it just reminded me a little bit of Dominic's talk earlier about, all I did was I went down to the local stationery store and bought some letraset and started doing stuff. And I thought, that looks pretty cool. Before I know it, they now show this off in kind of art schools and graphic schools as being like some fantastic kind of new Bauhaus type. It was just me messing about with a bit of letraset from the local stationery store. And I'm quite proud of it, though. Microgramma, bold, extended font and all that stuff. It's quite indicative of the time. But I had no training. I had no training in music. I had no training in graphic design. Just have a go. And I'm still doing stuff now. I designed that logo. This is a concert. We're doing some very big concerts at the Rewind festivals this year with lots of guest singers. So I'm still doing stuff now. And the reason why it's been so successful for the last 35 years, I think, is because I'm enthusiastic and I love what I do. And it's a cliche, but if you find something that you love, you never go to work, do you? So, anyway, back to Bowie. I feel very sad about his passing. But the point is, he created a framework which every single individual, he created an artistic framework which every single individual could populate with their own meaning. So that means that the individual artist, in this case Bowie, had a direct emotional connection with a lot of people for decades on end. And I'm sure if he'd have lived another 10, 20 years, this lot would just be as influenced by what he did. What does it mean? He leaves that up to you a lot of the time. And that's the fantastic thing about creativity and artistic enterprise. You leave some wriggle room for people to populate it with their meaning, with your own meaning. And he was a thinker, he was a poet, he was an artist. But most of all, to me, and to many millions of people, he was an inspiration. And if you look at this final poster that was designed for his album, I mean, that to me is like saying goodbye, really, in a very artistic way. Even the graphics are so immensely beautiful and, you know, a deconstructed star. Even talking about it, it's obvious what he's trying to get across there. And we can all be our own creative heroes. It's a terrible pun, I know, because that's the cover of Heroes. But, you know, I would just want to use this opportunity to say thank you very much to David Bowie for enabling me to have a career. And thank you all for listening.